There's a mystery afoot in the Disney parks, a character that's been absent for decades. One of the most important Disney characters, one of the oldest Disney characters. He's been disavowed, shunned, shirked from the parks. I'm talking about the original Disney villain, Peg Leg Pete. AKA Pete, Disney's Pete. Not that Pete, and also not this Pete, and also not that Pete. This Pete! This is the story of the missing character, Peg Leg Pete. All right, let's talk about the oldest character in Disney's history. Something that goes all the way back to like Alice's Crazy Adventures, that first live action cartoon thing that Walt Disney made, like, you know, back in the 30s. In the 20s? We had pen and paper in the 20s? He originally was a bear with one leg. He had rounded ears. He was this big, large, imposing character with a pretty solid silhouette. And then he got this pretty iconic peg leg. But later, when he was brought into the Mickey Mouse cinematic universe, he was transformed into a cat boat owner. Because, you know, cats and water, they go hand in hand. So Disneyland opens, it's 1955, it's Fantasyland. Mickey and Minnie are running around. We have all of the characters there in the park, from Pluto to Donald to Snow White and some dwarves. But what character could not be found? The original OG bad guy to the guy who runs the place, that old famous stinky mouse out back. Pete, where's Mickey's villain? Where's Mickey's adversary? Where is the guy chasing around Mickey once the lights go out? Cat and mouse games, you know? Do all the feral cats in Disneyland count as Pete? Are they all named Pete? The Mickey Mouse we got in 1955 looks like he just had a battle with Pete, who scraped open his face aggressively. For the first couple of years of the parks being open, we eventually got lots of different villains like Captain Hook or Maleficent, but it seems like the original was left out, the original Disney villain. It's almost like Mickey built this park, this castle with these great big walls to keep Pete out. Like we didn't see it, but in the parking lot, we walked by a lot of signs that said no Pete's. Now let me say that it's hard digging deep into Pete to try to figure out what happened, where he is, what he is. And I have some theories about why he's not in the park, but we'll get to that. But I have to show you pretty much the only official Disney Parks Pete look, and it is in the 1980s Christmas time parade spectacular at Disneyland, Fantasy on Parade. Now I watched many years, and there only seems to be 1 year that a Pete costume was used in a very specific dog catching unit of this parade, and he was just the driver, wearing this big obnoxious mask and overalls and what essentially looks like a Spirit jersey. Now this spot in the parade, I'm not sure how Pete managed to get into it because it's a dog catcher unit that is usually reserved for Cruella. It's a live action dog parade float. They're not like animatronic, these are real dogs in this parade float. And when Cruella's involved, the Dalmatians jump out of the thing, they chase Cruella around, they jump back into the thing. But the 1 year that Pete was involved, it was just a random dog catcher. We had a good hard time spotting him. Like, I watched so many parade footages of Fantasy on Parade, and like, you can kind of see him from a distance in some shots. And I'd like to point out that Pete's almost 60 years old at this point. The character had been in existence and had been used aggressively for about 60 years, and we still did not have a costume character until this 80s Christmas parade. If you see this big group photo that we have of all the parade characters out back, you see Goofy down at the end of the line, and he's this huge tall thing that usually towers over Mickey and Minnie, Donald and Daisy. But then down the other line, even smaller than Brer Bear from Splash Mountain, is Pete, this tiny little thing. And when you start to conceptualize what Pete looks like in the cartoon, he is massive up against Mickey and Minnie. And so you start to have a scale discrepancy that just does not play out. Now it's a good time for me to remind you that the Magic Candle Company has really great theme park scented candles. And when you buy them and use Disney Dan 15 for 15% off your order, it helps the channel. You guys are awesome. You buy so many candles and it really helps support us here. Thank you so much. You know who's gonna come and save us? I'll tell you who's gonna come and save us. Disney on Ice. That's right, in 1988, Disney's World on Ice Diamond Celebration Show. And you all know what diamonds are. They're forever and also for 60 years. you know, someone's having an anniversary and you're like, what do I get? Just Google it. First is paper, then it's like leather, then like peaches or something. I don't know. It gets real strange once you start to get deep into it. So Pete was actually in this show. There was a whole segment. Of course, we're telling the history of Disney through this show. So we got to start with Steamboat Willie. There's this dumb bit. They bring like kids onto the ice and put them in boats and row them around. You know, kids love going to Disney on Ice to be put in rowboats. Mom, please take me to Disney Ice. Put me in the rowboat, Mama, please. There's no footage of Pete. There's just this single image of Pete from the souvenir booklet that you could get. And boy, this really opens up the door to a bigger discussion about how big Pete is. Look at the size of Pete. They're starting to kind of get the idea of it. They're bulking him up. He's got a really huge waist, and they put that tall hat on him. So this is a big character, especially up against all the kids in the boats. I love the peg leg here. It's very bold, it's very bright. In the parade, we didn't get a peg leg because he's driving a vehicle. It doesn't matter, you couldn't see his feet. But here we really get a peg leg, and they play with the oversized pant leg of the one active, you know, existing leg. I love it. I love black and white. I wish I could have seen this. The fact that Pete's always got a cigar in his mouth, it just says to me, this guy doesn't smell good. He just looks like he smells bad. A chronic cigar smoking cat? No thanks. There's not enough Zyrtec on Earth. These two appearances do a great job at highlighting why he's not in the parks, because he's not held up against any of the classic Fab Five characters. We're not putting Pete in the same scene as Mickey. We're not putting Pete in the same scene as Goofy or Donald, because he's literally the same size as them. There isn't enough of a difference storytelling-wise to make the character work. Otherwise, you'd have to build some massive, massive costume that would be incredibly terrifying. And while Pete has been absent in costumes, he's still being used well throughout the parks. He's got all kinds of stuff. He has Pete's Silly Sideshow over there at Disney World, where you can meet like 4 characters inside. He's got this big sideshow thing. That's about as big as I imagine Pete is when I walk up to that big sign. He's huge, man. Does anyone remember that sports store at downtown Disney that you could go into? I couldn't even be brought near a sports ball as a kid. I was a theater major, so I never went into the store, but apparently there was a really cool Pete statue inside. He's wearing pinstripes, he's all bronzed up, he's holding a bat, he's smoking a big fat cigar, you know, true Pete fashion. Ultimately, when this store got closed and we somehow managed to gentrify, like literally one of the whitest places on earth, even further into Disney Springs, we got rid of that store, and Pete moved over to World of Sports, ESPN's Wild World of Sports, as kind of like a big welcome. They repainted him. Now he looks kind of cool. He's like kind of in a modern baseball outfit or whatever, the jerseys, whatever they're called. I don't know. But we got rid of his cigar. There's no more Stinky Pete. We've used Pete's branding a lot to kind of be like, oh, here's Mickey's villain, here's an opposing force, or here's a shisty, a scam artist kind of Disney character, but we're not seeing him in the parks as a physical presence, and that bums me out. Until, and quite honestly, I was super stoked about this, and kind of what kicked off the whole spiral that made me research this and kind of look through all of the Pete history, is 2020's Runaway Railway with Mickey and Minnie. That scene, the city scene where Pete is drilling, does the best job of setting up the scale of that character compared to the rest of the team. Look in the windows around Pete. It's all the Fab Five to scale with this gigantic, monstrous cat that's like, you know, vibrating the entire set. So why are we excluding Pete? Come on, Yellow Shoes, answer. Come on, Mickey, is there no love in your heart for Pete? This is a safe place. This is escapism. Come to Disney World. You know, we've got villain nights galore and we still haven't had a Pete. There was even that parade in Paris. Remember that parade where they brought out like every costume that has existed? It was like a parade of like 100 bazillion stars, and no Pete in that. What do you mean no Pete in that? You're gonna give me everyone, but not, you're gonna give me like I don't even know half the, I don't even know what character this is. You can just pick one random lady. You expect me to know who this woman is and you won't give me Pete? We even had that one monster with the sock on his shoulder and I still don't have Pete. There is a scale argument because we now have bigger costumes. We have Sully, we have Baymax, we even have things like Sean Yu and Hades. These are big, bulky costumes with huge shoulder pieces that sit on top of cast members' heads. We can do it, we have the technology. I'll even take an inflatable Pete, like Baymax was. We even have like a huge puppet Jack Skellington that appeared in nighttime shows. I really, really would love to see a gigantic, menacing Pete in the parks sometime soon. It just seems like such a huge missed opportunity. Even a parade float. I've seen what you guys have done with gigantic characters on parade floats. The horrors you've done to Ursula, and you can't give me one creepy Pete? Let me give a call out to one of my favorite guys. He's a Patreon supporter of mine. He's in my Discord. This guy is amazing. He collects bootleg mascot costumes. Oh my gosh, Lucas Bradley. And Lucas has a Pete costume that he had made. And you know what? It ain't bad looking. Look at this Pete. It's really cool. He got a nice bulbous midsection. The head sculpt is really fun. This is a fun, cartoonized version of Pete. Here's proof. Here's proof that Pete works as a costume character. He can be menacing and kind of, but also lovable and soft and squishy and cuddly, like Lotso Bear, you know? We've been doing so much with villains in the parks. I think it's time for Pete, guys.
Yeah, what he said. I would love to meet you guys in the parks.
So this was a hard one, guys. This was like an evolution of a character who's only appeared twice. He's missing. I don't drink milk anymore. Do they still put missing people on milk cartons? If so, let's get a picture of Pete on there ASAP. With Disney's big push into villains lately, I think it only makes sense that we see some kind of Pete appearance outside of like a fireworks show or a cartoon. We need to see Pete in the parks. He's the OG. He's arguably older than Mickey Mouse as a character that was designed before Mickey even had the pants on his little mouse legs. So Pete is important to the brand, and I'm glad that we're seeing him pop up here and there, but he needs more than just a baseball statue and like a circus tent, all right? He needs to be wandering around the parks, terrifying small children. If we don't have that, then what is any of this for? This has taken me down a path where I'm beginning to corral all of the biggest costume characters I can find. So let me know in the comments or over on social all of your stories about gigantic costume character interactions and all the fun pictures and videos you guys had. Share them with me. Find me over on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Patreon, TikTok, Twitch. We're on all the places. I can't wait to see all your photos, hear all of your stories. Thanks for watching so much, guys. And if you see Michael Eisner, tell him to get on working on a Pete costume. He still has influence, I know it. He's now running Topps baseball cards, so, you know, figure that out. Oh, thanks for watching, guys. You rock. There's a Bob or two out there that I know can make good work. Well, let's just put Bob Chapek in a Pete costume. That's fine. He's got that aggressive Big Daddy energy that Pete needs, you know, to be like, hey, give me your money. I got a cigar. You know, that's Bob Chapek wrapped up for you. There you go.